During this lecture, let's talk about why you should use DevOps. Of course, the thing that sums it up is because it helps you improve the delivery times of new features to your users. But let's dive a little bit more into the advantages of using DevOps. So far we know that this course is going to be focused in three things: automating builds, automating tests, and automating delivery. And this is exactly what conforms DevOps, the automation of this delivery process. From coding the next feature to delivering to new users, everything can be automated. And that is what DevOps is. This is going to just make our life easier so we as developers can focus on just one thing: developing, building the solution for that next feature. So right there, that is the very first advantage of using DevOps. Your focus doesn't have to go to building your code. Once you finish your feature, you should no longer have to spend time building it. Of course, it takes just a few seconds in some scenarios, but in some others, it may take a bit longer. Furthermore, you shouldn't be taking a lot of time testing your code. Once you have written your tests, instead of waiting for the test to run and see if they have passed and see what went wrong, all of this should just be automated. And in this case, App Center will let you know if there was some problem. But if there wasn't, you shouldn't have to worry about creating a new package of your code and making sure that you are setting the correct build and making sure that this package can be uploaded to the stores, because all of this just takes time from you and it makes the delivery process take longer. Instead, you should just focus on coding the next feature. So maybe as soon as you have coded one feature and deployed to your users automatically, you already have the next feature lined up to be delivered as fast as possible. So by now you should already know that DevOps is about coding that next feature, finding the solution to a problem that you or the product team or someone inside of your organization has identified. Once you have the solution, you should be able to deliver quickly. And of course, this means that your users are going to be happy, your application is going to be better, and this should make your entire organization grow faster. Especially if your competition is not yet an organization that is using DevOps to get to their own users faster. Let's in fact compare those two scenarios in which you already have a DevOps operation and your competition just doesn't yet. You can just discover issues quickly, especially if you're using things like App Center to quickly diagnose and analyze how your users behave. After that, you can quickly code the solution to that issue that you just discovered and let CI/CD do the rest. This makes your users happy. On the other hand, if your competition doesn't have any of this, they may take some time from maybe identifying a new issue to eventually perhaps deploying to their own users. And just in case having your users happy isn't enough, there are plenty of other things why this is important. Because bugs happen. We are not perfect as developers, and there are going to be some issues with our application. We should solve them as soon as we find them. Of course, OS updates break things. In fact, in this slide I want to talk about a certain application from a company here in Mexico that I am not going to mention, but that in 2 years hasn't released a single update to their iOS application. And because OS updates break things, this application is so bad that in some scenarios not even the text entries work. Imagine what a lame application this is, that some text fields don't work, because this happens. OS updates break things. Of course, users ask for new features, and your team should be able to add those new features quickly. Users don't use your app the way you thought they would. This happens very often. And with App Center, you will be able to understand how your users behave. So as soon as you identify that they don't behave the way you thought they would, you can adapt your application so they find that button that is very important to you and that your users aren't finding. Or maybe your users are not signing up, so maybe you should improve the sign-up process, something like that. If the product team is constantly working on finding new features to add or finding new improvements, they are going to let you know about them. And you should be able to implement them as soon as possible because the product team usually focuses on making your product the best possible. Of course, new devices come up, and these new devices may have different aspect ratios, have new interfaces, which is in fact the next point in here as well, and you should adapt your application to those new devices, those new interfaces. And by interfacing here, I don't mean user interface, I mean, for example, when the Apple Watch came out, your application may take advantage of that new interface. Or maybe in a few months or in a few years, the new augmented reality system comes out and your application should adapt to that new interface. Another reason why this is important is that the sign languages get outdated and your application should remain beautiful to the eye. So you should quickly update as your application maybe doesn't look too good anymore. Another big reason why this is important is that new requirements from Apple and Google come out and you should solve them as fast as possible. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, Apple said that in all of those applications that request login or sign up with a social application like Facebook or Twitter, those applications should also implement sign in with Apple feature. And those applications that do not have that feature are just not going to be listed in the App Store anymore. Imagine that scenario, that application that I just mentioned, that hasn't been updated in 2 years. Any of these things could make it suddenly not be listed by Apple or Google. And of course, it goes without saying, I am no longer their user because of this, because they haven't implemented a good deployment process so that they are constantly updating their service. On the other hand of the spectrum, there are companies like Amazon, Adobe, and Netflix that deploy new versions of their services every few seconds. Yes, you heard that right, every few seconds. Amazon, in fact, has become famous in the DevOps world from being able to deploy a new version of their code every 11.7 seconds. That is just insane. And of course, this is not what I want you to eventually do if you don't require it. Amazon is a huge company with, I'm sure, a ton of things to update all the time. If your company is smaller, you do not need to deploy every few seconds, but with a DevOps operation running smoothly, you can change from maybe deploying a new feature every couple of weeks or every couple of months to every few days. And why do these companies focus so much on DevOps to the point that Amazon deploys every few seconds? Well, there is of course a business advantage to using DevOps. You can continuously innovate. As soon as you get a new idea, you can get it to your users very quickly. This means that you stay ahead of your competition. Because if they are not implementing a good DevOps strategy, well, they stay behind. They cannot implement as fast as possible. And that continuous innovation may not be just the next amazing feature that the product team came up with, but also meeting new market needs. I already mentioned how users constantly want new features, and as soon as you hear about them, well, with a DevOps operation that is running smoothly, you can quickly deploy that new feature that meets those new market needs. And you're also going to be doing it faster. Faster time to market means that you again stay ahead of your competition. It's just going to become very hard for a competition that doesn't use DevOps to keep up with you. This is a key business advantage, and that is precisely why companies like Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, Adobe are implementing DevOps in their development process. So hopefully it is now clear why you should use DevOps. Not just to keep your users happy or because things break inside of your application and you should be able to solve them as soon as possible, but there is also a business advantage. So no matter where you look at it, DevOps is just the way to go. Maybe in some very small scenarios, DevOps just takes time away from you, but in most scenarios, DevOps is just going to make your business run smoothly. So until here, I hope that you are now convinced that you should use DevOps if you weren't already when you signed up for this course. In the next lecture, I want to give you a sneak peek about what you will have by the end of this course, so it is crystal clear what you will accomplish by the end. Mainly, we're going to quickly code a new feature, and we're going to take a look about what App Center is going to be doing to deploy that new feature to our users.